What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the New York Giants just signed their CB1, Paulson Adebo, to a 3-year deal worth $18 million per season. If you heard initial reports saying that it was 3 years, $10 million, that was inaccurate. It's 3 years, $18 million per season, a big deal, but the Giants did get a CB1 in this contract, and we're going to go ahead and give you our instant reaction to this news, what we think it means for the New York Giants, and kind of give you our take on the contract, how much we do or don't like this deal for Paulson Adebo. And spoiler alert, I like it. I think it's a good contract, and I think this is a good player that has a very particular skill set that the New York Giants really needed to add to their secondary. Plus, he's young, which I think is super important. Alex, let's waste no more time. Let's go ahead and dive right into the Paulson Adebo signing. What is your take on it? How are you feeling about the Giants signing Paulson Adebo today?
I'm doing pretty good, and listen, this is a solid signing for the Giants. Now, this guy's coming off a broken femur, so you just don't know what version of him you're going to get next season. He played like 7 games last year, but the contract isn't that bad. 18 mil per season, 30 mil guaranteed. Was it 30, 36 million guaranteed? Whatever it was 36 mil guaranteed. It's a lot of guaranteed money. It's like you're paying for this player to be your top cornerback. Deontay Banks, ideally ends up becoming better, and they can have like a CB1, CB1A, 1B situation in a best case scenario. But Adebo, he's an interesting talent, right? Like, coming off this injury, he may be a little slow out of the gate as he kind of reacclimates to playing at a high level. But this is a really young guy. Like, he's 25 years old. So that's one of the things I do like the most about him, is that you're not getting like a 29-year-old, 30-year-old cornerback that's like aging into the decline. You're getting a guy that still has years left at his peak performance athletically. So, I do think that he can make this contract look very good long term. And, with that being said, they needed a leader in this secondary, man. They needed someone with experience, someone that was going to step in and they can depend on to be the guy. The only thing that I kind of is really concerning to me is the scheme fit. Like, he's a man-to-man corner. We play a little bit more zone with Bowen, so I wonder if how his fit will be. But even if he's under contract for 3 more years, I do wonder if the Giants are thinking. I mean, not the Giants, because they might not be here, Shane and Dable long term, depending on what happens this season. But if they do end up turning the whole house over, I think he's a good scheme fit either way for another defensive coordinator that does come in. So I think he's pretty versatile in that way. So I do like him as just a piece for the Giants, not necessarily for Bowen or for this coaching staff, just as a good football player. This is middle of the pack money for starting corners these days. And we just saw Carlton Davis get 20 mil. So Adebo, I think is kind of makes a lot of sense that he got 18 mil per season. This contract, if he looks good year 1, year 2, will look like a steal long term. But again, we need to actually get the most out of a player like this. The Giants need to do well with their coaching. Good players, they're good players, but coaching can sometimes ruin good players. The Giants need to put these guys in positions to succeed and be good football players, because ultimately we're seeing a lot of talent from the Giants go elsewhere and have really good careers. Ben Bredeson just got a 3-year deal from the freaking Buccaneers. We're seeing other players have success elsewhere. The Giants need to make sure that their talent is good and they position them to be good. So I hope that Adebo, they can maximize his skill set that he's bringing in with him from New Orleans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just throw some clarity out there on the coverage rates for the New York Giants, Alex, just to clear this up for you and for fans, because I think there is a misconception here on how much man or zone coverage the Giants run. The Giants still ran the 11th highest rate of man coverage last season. Their zone coverage rate was only 21st in the NFL. They still ran way more man coverage than the league average. They run it too much, in my opinion. So that's just how I personally feel. However, what I will say is that Paulson Adebo did excel in cover 3 zone when they played that. And if you all remember last season, I went on my rant about how the Giants needed to run more cover 3 zone to maximize Deontay Banks, and they actually did run more cover 3 zone than anyone else in the league this past season, is something that I read from PFF. So this is a scheme match, with Paulson Adebo moving over here to the New York Giants, being a real great cover 3 zone cornerback who has press man qualities. He actually is exactly what the Giants wanted Deonte Banks to be. He's just had better development in his career so far. Very similar size and skill profiles between these two players, but one has great ball skills and the other one doesn't. And that's this particular set of skills that I referenced at the beginning of the episode that gets me so excited about this signing, Alex. If you didn't see the stat, Paulson Adebo has the most forced incompletions in the NFL across the last 2 seasons, and he missed 10 games with a broken leg last season. So that's incredible production. The fact that he has more force incompletions than any cornerback, and he missed 10 games, tells you how often he gets onto the football. Yeah, maybe you look at his PFF grade, sure, maybe he lets up some big receptions here or there, but you live and you die with that, and you kind of move on when he makes that interception, right? And that's what you love to see. He's got great ball skills, and again, like I said with Deonte Banks, his problem isn't being there in coverage. Oftentimes, he's right there. We always see Deonte Banks just getting head topped, right? It's just getting mossed and letting up contested catches. That's the issue with Deonte Banks. Paulson Adebo doesn't have that issue, and that's exactly what the Giants needed with a CB1 with legitimate ball skills, the ability to turn their head around and get their hands on the football. So I really like this signing. I think it's a quality signing there. But Alex, I do want to talk about that injury that I just referenced. It's a broken femur. It's a pretty significant injury. He missed 10 games due to it. However, I saw the video of him that he posted on social media a couple weeks ago. Man's doing backflips and sprints and all the agility drills. It looks like he never had an injury in the first place. But I do want to ask you, is there any level of concern on your end about this injury? His recovery seems to be going well, and he'll be ready for week 1 for sure. But, anything long-term, any ideas here or transgressions that you might have about this injury and the way it might affect him going forward?
Yeah, so, this is totally different, but I'll give you kind of an idea of this injury compared to other ones. A couple years ago, I really, really injured my left ankle, and super bad high ankle sprain, really messed it up. And I went to the doctor and I asked him, I was like, well, good thing it wasn't broken, right? And he said, actually, you probably would have been better off if it was broken. And I'm like, why? Well, he was like, well, bone heals back to 100%. Ligaments never heal the same. So if you're looking at a broken bone, how many of you guys have had broken bones before and now you're totally back to normal and no problems? How many of you guys have had torn ACLs, MCLs, torn ligaments, and whatever, and you can always feel it? My left ankle can always feel it. It's always stiff. Bones, and look, broken femur, that's no joke. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that's a easy one, because it's one of the biggest bones in your body. So I do think that breaking a femur is substantial. It's significant. But if it was a clean break and the bone heals back to 100%, he should theoretically be back to 100% capacity athletically, in terms of his capacity to do anything, cutting, whatever. If he's back and that bone is healed 100%, he should be good to go. There shouldn't be much issues there. So in terms of injury, I'm no doctor. This is just what I asked my doctor, and what he said to me. Bone breaks are usually a lot better when it comes to healing than in ligament tears and stuff like that. That usually never fully recover.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the science behind that is that when the bone breaks and it heals over, it builds a barrier on top of itself. So the bone gets stronger after it heals, is what I've learned from that in the past, and the reason why you'd rather have that happen versus a ligament injury. But I will reference and kind of play both sides of the fence here, just because I think that's good for us to do and be objective in our analysis. We've seen specific injuries to, let's say, ACL tears, where we've seen a guy like Saquon Barkley struggle for a year and then eventually come back, and now he's arguably the best player in the NFL, and that was coming back from an ACL. Yeah, a lot of it's mental, sure, but we've also seen on the other side of the fence, I'm pretty sure it was Odell Beckham Jr. who broke his femur against the Chargers in Week 5, I think it was, in the 2017 season. Remember that game where the Giants had 5 season-ending injuries to wide receivers? Never seen anything like that. He was never the same after that injury, and it was a very similar injury to the one that Paulson Adebo just had. So, again, while usually this leads to a full recovery, complete recovery, and the player is completely fine, we have seen instances, and I'm only using my Giants knowledge here, but I could go elsewhere, but Giants knowledge, Odell Beckham Jr. did struggle coming back from this. Meanwhile, some of those ligament injuries we have seen players return from. So it depends. It's on a player-by-player basis. No injury is the same as another injury, even if it's one broken femur and another, totally different for the two people that we're talking about, because each individual goes through the process and heals differently. But from what I've seen, like I said, Paulson Adebo looks ready to play. He looks like if there was a game tomorrow, he'd be suiting up and he'd be ready to go. So I'm encouraged by it, and I really don't think that the Giants would have signed him if they didn't feel or if they felt as though this injury was going to linger and nag at him long term.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, like, I was just looking it up as you were talking, and dude, a broken femur sounds like horrible. It sounds horrible. It's the biggest bone in your body, dude, and there's like blood vessels and stuff that are impacted when it breaks. Like the compound fracture that has to happen to that must have been some of the most excruciating pain that anyone could ever imagine. If this dude's coming back to play football right now, this guy must be one tough son of a gun, because that is no joke. OBJ ended up breaking his fibula, which is a little bit less of an injury in terms of comparisons to femur. So, like, I'm just glad, because breaking a femur, like, you could puncture blood vessels and, like, you could have major problems with that. So seemingly it was like a clean break and there was no issues there, thankfully for his case. So, it seems like he's back to full strength, though, because I don't think the Giants would have given him that amount of money unless they did, like, major due diligence on that medically.
Right, and I would really hope that they did, and I just have to assume that they did. And if they didn't, well, we'll find out eventually. But it sounds like they did their due diligence. And again, I think the contract, yes, it's pricey, but as you mentioned, I think he's being paid, the 16th most of any cornerback in the NFL, somewhere in that 16 to 20 range. So it's really not that much of an overpay. And that's the next part that I wanted to really key in on here before we wrap, Alex. Age. I think age is such an important factor of this conversation. This is a guy who's only been in the league for 4 years. I know we talked a lot, Alex, about Travarius Ward, DJ Reed, and some of these other cornerbacks who have been on the market or who were anticipated to be on the market, Byron Murphy Jr. as well. Those guys weren't going for second contracts. They were going for third contracts. Travarius Ward has already signed 2 contracts. He was looking for his third. DJ Reed today just signed his third contract of his career. It's a big difference between a 28-year-old cornerback and a 25-year-old cornerback. Huge difference. And that's why I think the Giants did find value here with Paulson Adebo. He's a player who is still ascending, and that's really the key word for me, ascending, because that's the word that Joe Schoen used in Hard Knocks when discussing Brian Burns and the trade that he made for Burns. He said that we feel like we're trading for a player, and yes, we're paying him a lot of money, but we're also paying him for what he's going to do because we think he's still ascending. That's what they said for Brian Burns. That's what I think the logic here is behind Paulson Adebo. And Paulson Adebo, like I said, he's got great ball skills, he's physical, and he's young, and those are the 3 things that you look for in a cornerback. That's a guy who grows with you. And I think a lot of Giants fans will look at other cornerbacks that the team has signed in the past and maybe try and make some comparisons. I actually think this could be a lot more similar, Alex, to when they had DRC on that contract many years ago. If you remember when they signed him, at the moment, it looked like a major overpay, but he was still young and ascending, and he ended up having a pretty successful few years with the New York Giants as a premier cornerback one. So I think it's always tough to look into the comparison well and into the past for the Giants, because the Giants have been so hit or miss. But overall, I fare on the positive side of this contract. I think this is a good deal for a young ascending player. And like I said, this is a team that's not ready to compete right now. They need to plan for the future. Adebo helps them be a better football team immediately from day one. And I know it's only a 3-year deal, but you have to assume if he plays well in that 3-year deal, he'll get another deal. He could be a long-term building block for the New York Giants, and that's why I like this deal so much.
Yeah. I think that's well put. And ultimately, like I said earlier in the episode, whether or not Joe Schoen survives, Dable survives, Shane Bowen survives, Paulson Adebo will be a good player for the Giants for multiple seasons, whether they're here or not. This isn't like a one and done type of thing. This isn't like a 29-year-old, 28-year-old major overpay. This is a young player that can be here for quite a substantial amount of time and build with the team, whether the current regime is in place or not. So I think that's well put. And listen, like, I'll be curious to see how he performs coming off this injury. I just watched the video, and it wasn't as ugly. You don't see it like as ugly as it probably was. You can hear it, so it's not exactly a fun watch per se. But this is definitely a situation where I do think like they definitely had to ensure that he was 100% healthy. Like, they had to make sure that he had no complications, doing backflips, doing all his stuff, looking good. It is a risk, though. Like, I know we're being optimistic, but this is a freaking risk by Joe Schoen. $18 million for a guy that just broke his femur. Let's not dance around the fact. It's a risk. I know he's young. I know he's, coming off a decent season. He had 7 penalties in 7 games. This guy is not void of penalties. That's for sure. One way a Saints fan described it on social media was, this guy will have a DPI and the next play have an interception. Like, he's really good at bouncing back from mistakes. So like we like that about Paulson Adebo, but $18 million for a guy that just broke the biggest bone in your body. It's a freaking risk. It's a gamble, but I have to trust that they did their due diligence, making sure that this guy was fully healthy before they signed him and there were no complications. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt with this one.
I don't really know if the New York Giants have earned the benefit of the doubt, but we'll give it to them anyway because we are optimistic fans. And just some other details that I want to throw out there about Paulson Adebo so everybody gets what the Giants are signing here. He's a 6'1", 198-pound cornerback who ran a 4.4 40-yard dash at the Combine in 2021. So he is a very athletic player. Like I said, I feel like he is a very similar player to Deonte Banks. This feels like what the Giants wanted Deonte Banks to be, a rangy, athletic cornerback who's physical, but actually has ball skills, and that's a big key difference here. And Alex, I just want to make one last note because you did mention this is a risk on this injury, and you're absolutely right in saying that. The Giants officially on Twitter just tweeted the following. They said, reports, we've agreed to terms with cornerback Paulson Adebo pending a physical. So they do have to have the physical. That is customary for every free agent that signs with a team. They come in, they do the physical, and then they sign their contract. However, I just want to remind people the physical is an important part of this process, especially for a guy who just broke his femur 6 months ago. So we'll see with the New York Giants. I don't know if they could find any complications during that physical that would cause the contract to change or alter. But of course, if anything like that happens, and that would be pretty drastic. I don't anticipate something like that happening, but if it does, we will update you guys right here on Fireside Giants. But overall, Alex, I like this deal. I think it's a good one. Ascending young player, a lot of potential, a lot of athleticism, and a lot of ball skills. No pause. I love the way that this guy gets his hands on the footballs and makes plays, and that's what I'm excited for. So I think this is the Giants' first splash signing. We didn't want to talk about anything else going on in the day because I'm going to go live later today, and we're going to probably upload another episode later whenever the New York Giants finally lands their quarterback. We're waiting for more information and waiting to see what happens there. And of course, as those things happen, we'll continue to update you guys right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. You listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.